March 9th, 2022. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting. I am Lisa Dorsey, Chair. I am accompanied by Sheila Vaccaro and Nick Allen. Second order of business is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents for items not on the agenda. Moving on, seeing none, we'll move on to number three, and that is the monthly fire department report.
Good evening, Justin McClure, Assistant Fire Chief. Chief Pelna sends his apologies for not being here. He is on vacation this week. Council has the statistics for the fire department for the month of February. Call volume is slightly above average, but not to the point that we're seeing any specific trend that would cause that. We did have 3 accidents with entrapment during the month of February where we had to physically extricate people due to the conditions of their vehicles after the crash. But all of them are expected to recover. Do you have any questions about the report, the statistics specifically, or?
I didn't have any questions.
The only other thing I wanted to touch on was we've had a lot of questions as we get into the winter months about carbon monoxide and combustible gas. Carbon monoxide is an odorless, colorless, and tasteless gas, which is a byproduct of incomplete combustion. So you'll see that anywhere where you have home heating oil or your gas stove or your fireplace. And it's completely undetectable to our senses. Exposure to carbon monoxide inhibits our body ability to absorb oxygen. So symptoms can range from slight headaches, dizziness, nausea, which we would compare to flu-like symptoms. Extreme exposure can lead to unconsciousness or unfortunately even death. So both propane and natural gas in their natural states are colorless and odorless as well. In 1937, 295 students and teachers were killed as a result of a natural gas explosion at the New London School in New London, Texas. And this was before it was required that natural gas or propane have an odorant added to it. That odorant that was since been added as a result of that incident mainly is called mercaptan. It's what we would equivalent to a rotten egg smell. So it would be what you smell if you left a burner on the stove and the pilot light wasn't on, and you get that kind of rotten egg smell. So that's on purpose, but it's not naturally occurring in the gas. But the best way that we can protect ourselves in the home from these hazards is by installing carbon monoxide and combustible gas detectors. These detectors provide advanced warning of these hazards to anyone with appliances, which are powered by natural gas, propane, or home heating oil. The National Fire Protection Association, which we call the NFPA, is what you'll frequently hear it called, recommends that carbon monoxide alarms be installed in the central location outside of each sleeping area on every level of the home. And in other locations where required by applicable laws, codes, or standards, which the borough has for commercial and rental properties, combustible gas detectors should be placed by any appliance using natural gas or propane. These types of detection devices can be found at your local hardware store. Their lifespan is generally anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It is not a costly investment, and it's something that we certainly encourage to anyone that has the potential to have these hazards in their home. As always, when any of these alarms go off, we encourage people to call 911, let the fire department come out and look and see what's going on. We have some pretty sensitive detection equipment that can help narrow down that cause and then point you in the direction you need to go to get that mitigated. We also put a bunch of information out on our social media about this information as recently as today. So if you need any other information, you can go there and take a look, or you can reach out to Chief Pelna or myself, and we'd be happy to talk about it more. That's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Chief McClure, that was actually my next question was how can we get more information? So thanks for sharing that.
Not a problem.
Chief Moorhead?
Good evening. James Moorhead, Chief of Police. For the month of February, the police department responded to 3,105 calls for service, of which 2,347 of those were in the borough. That is a typical February. It's one of the slowest months we experience throughout the year. Going to the next page, we can see elevated Part 1, which is serious crime, and Part 2, which is nuisance crime. That is not unremarkable due to pandemic issues, which we've discussed at previous meetings. If we can go to page 3, though, the Part 1 spike gets a little concerning because we're seeing those rises in assaultive and theft, assaultive behavior and thefts. So we're monitoring that closely with a stronger presence uptown, especially during bar hours when they're at their peak and closing. You'll also see to the far right, motor vehicle theft or MV theft as pictured there. Last year we had none during the month, and this year we experienced 3 just in the month of February. So my PSA for the residents of the borough in East Bradford Township we are seeing obviously an explosion of carjackings in the Philadelphia area, and we are not insulated from that. Newcastle, Wilmington, Coatesville are experiencing, and we've now started to see some copycat type behavior. So please be aware of your surroundings before you get out of your car, whether you're at the Wawa getting gas. It's very convenient to get out and keep your car running due to the still chilly weather, but I just caution everybody, look around before you get out of your car, make sure nothing seems out of place, and make sure obviously you turn off your engine before you get out.
Chief, can I ask a question? Were
Yeah.
those carjackings, those 3 incidents?
Those are motor vehicle thefts, but I just wanted to tie that into
Okay.
carjackings. We did not experience carjackings in the month of February. Those are strictly car thefts, keys left in vehicle type things. So thank you for clarifying. And then the final slide is just our part 2 crime. You can see, big spikes in public drunkenness. But you can see liquor law behavior is down. So this is nothing concerning here. February, again, everybody's out and about and moving. Everything's open again. So, it's not surprising that we're seeing numbers as pictured here. And I'll take your questions.
I have no further questions. Mr. Carl, Mr. Allen,
Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
thank you,
And
Chief.
I'll be back.
Report from Good Fellowship.
Justin Robbins, Assistant Chief, Good Fellowship Ambulance. Chief Brogan is out of town right now, so he was unable to make it tonight. So just going off our numbers, February, our call volume was up a little bit from what we saw last year. It is still higher than what we saw pre-pandemic, so our call volume is increasing. We are a little bit lower than what we saw in the first half of 2021 just because of the pandemic. So you'll see those call numbers go up as we go through the next couple months here over our reports. New hospital has opened in the area. It's Children's Hospital Philadelphia has opened a full hospital in King of Prussia. So that's actually now our closest children's hospital. So we've been transporting people there. You will see that reflected in our reports going forward. And that's all I had from Chief Brogan. Are there any questions specifically about the report?
Just wondering about the impact of the closing of Brandywine and, yeah,
So the direct impact on Good Fellowship and the services here is minimal because we very rarely transported to Brandywine Hospital or Jennersville Hospital. Where we are seeing the impact is the increased wait times in the emergency department due to those out-of-area ambulances now transporting to Chester County and Paoli. And the hospitals, unfortunately, aren't made for that volume. So typically we would go to the hospital, we would wait 10, 15 minutes for a bed. There have been instances where you're now waiting over an hour due to those closures.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Will the King of Prussia Hospital take a dent out of that at all?
Very minor. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Gay Street closure.
John O'Brien, Executive Director, Westchester Bid. I guess I'll kick this off, talking about this issue again. So what we need from council, I think at this point, is some clarity around, last month I discussed that there's 3 options in terms of if we want to go forward with the closure. We could, and these are no order of preference or anything. You could forego it for 2022. We could do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday attempt, or Friday, Saturday, I guess probably early Monday morning, take up some kind of barriers. Or there could be a full week closure with the acknowledgement, and I'm sure the police and fire department can talk about that, issues to traffic and potential emergency service response. We'll have to acknowledge that that is a potential that could come from that one option. So we're looking for feedback from council on what your feelings are on that in order to kind of plan for what could or could not be.
So although I am a supporter of closing Gay Street, and, I know that it's been very popular, and what we've done in the past couple of years, one was out of necessity, last year was because it was so popular. I think what we're contending with this year is a little bit different with the closure of Market Street and the potential, right, for concerns with emergency vehicles being able to get to patrons, businesses, et cetera. And I think I shared this with you, John. I would be in favor of some hybrid version, like maybe we take Gay Street down to 1 lane. We allow people to extend, particularly the retail businesses, to extend the sidewalk, much like we've discussed over the last month with split rail. And plan properly for a closing next summer where it would be, it would be aesthetically inviting, it would be safe, it would be, planned properly. So that's my position. I would rather keep people safe. And I also want to see the businesses do well. So that's my compromise. I'll open the floor to Mr. Carl, Mr. Allen.
I definitely want things to be safe. I think everyone knows that I want as much shutdown as we can get. I have been emailed repeatedly by residents saying that this is very important and we have to do it. And I've put them off, and I'm responding that this is an undertaking and we need to do it properly and carefully. Properly and carefully is key. And in my opinion, the weekend closing is confusing. I think that
Yes, it can be.
I think consistency is part of the properly and carefully plan. If we can sort of retrain everyone as to how this is going to work, I think the consistency is going to be key in that. So in my mind, it's either all week or some other compromise situation. I am not a proponent of the weekend option.
Okay.
And I know last month we were interested, on council to get a little bit more information about some of the emergency services rerouting that would need to take place.
So I mean, maybe Chief Moorhead or Assistant Chief McClure, I know there haven't been detours submitted with the PICO project, but they could probably speak better to that than I can.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, James Moorhead, your question specifically, Mr. Allen?
Yeah, I was wondering, because if I'm remembering correctly, in your letter, you expressed concern about having Market Street closed for PICO, having Gay Street closed for this, and then you were especially concerned about Church Street and just getting around the borough and being able to keep things safe that way. Has there been any detour planning or anything like that? Are there any updates with that?
No updates since we've last talked. I mean, the bottom line is going to be if council's wish is to do a part-time or a full-time closure, I think I could speak for the fire department and Good Fellowship as well. We will make it work. It's not going to be easy in 2022 due to what we've talked about with the Harmony Project and the hospital closures in the region, but certainly we can make it work. We're basically left with 2 options. One is more advanced and is our future project, and the one is the now. The future project is the bollards, which we've spoken about, K-rated bollards that can easily be removed by the fire department, by Public Works, for deliveries, for residents moving out of a block. That is the future, I strongly believe, for Westchester if we're going to continue to do this. What do we need to do in 2022? And we have to go back to, in 2020, we did bin blocks placed at the east and west ends of each of the affected blocks, strictly based on public safety. Again, K-type rating, stopping a vehicle up to 15,000 pounds. That is what the Department of State is recommending that we do. In 2021, we backed this posture down slightly, and we left those K-rated type barriers on the east ends of the block, and we did water barriers on the west end of the block in order to accommodate an ambulance or a fire truck that we could easily pull the plug, drain the water, move those out of the way in a minute. So it gives especially the fire apparatus access to those blocks. That was the concession made for 2021. It worked. It's not pretty. We know that. So myself, the mayor, Mr. Metrick have had conversations about what we want future Westchester to look like with the bollard system. It's not going to happen in 2022. So if we're going in 2022 with an option, it's going to have to be some type of bin block, Jersey barrier with the combination of the water barricades.
What are your thoughts, Chief Moorhead, on, reducing the traffic to one lane on Gay Street, extending the sidewalks? I would say that would be, 7 days a week, April to October, or whatever those dates are that we decide will work. What are your and EMS's response or thoughts on that?
What we've looked at is we either need to close Gay Street altogether for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever the option's going to be. I believe it has to be fully closed because we're just going to create a huge log jam in those affected blocks, and we're not going to be able to get anywhere anyway. We're going to be looking for other ways, alternative ways around if we go to a one-lane closure on Gay Street. It's going to create a traffic nightmare. So it's, in my opinion, it should be closed altogether for the 7-day or the 3-day period. Take your pick. Obviously, the 3-day, as Ms. Vaccaro pointed out, is confusing, and it's also an issue with being able to not only move those barriers on a weekly basis. Where do you stack them? Now you're eliminating parking spots, which affects the borough as well. So whatever you decide, we will make work. Emergency services together, we will make work. I've certainly expressed enough on this, but we can make it work. Whatever you decide, it's just going to take some coordination on the temporary justification versus looking down 2023 and beyond.
And when I really think, when I try to think big picture about this, I think about Minor Market, Gay, Chestnut as your higher traffic business district streets, and 3 out of 4 of those are westbound. And so I feel like we can afford to lose a westbound. Losing an eastbound is tough, which we're going to have to do no matter what because of Market Street. So I imagine Price Street might get a little bit messy. So that's kind of big picture what's on my mind with this. And then what was the other thing? I don't know. I'm kind of blanking out. I had another thing to say. Did you have something to add?
While you're coming up with that,
Yeah.
Just real quick to that point, this is what we saw in 2020. We did the closure, and the complaints started pouring in from those blocks that are outside the CBD region because they are seeing that intense traffic increase. So we're going to see that again. If we go forward with this, again, it can be taken care of especially if we work with PennDOT and Green Light Go and the timing issues and all of that stuff. But we see a whole host of other issues as a result of that. And then I also had another point. I think you're contagious. You made me forget.
Yeah, we should check for carbon monoxide in here maybe. But what I was going to say, so you were saying that there were residents who had issues. Was that mainly like Chestnut Street or like what is that?
Chestnut, Minor, and then some of the cross-traffic issues where people were trying to get down Church Street or come across High Street. We put up the stop signs and people just blow through them. We have near pedestrian encounter type incidents. So those are all things that we have to adjust to and deal with. So yeah, but that outside traffic issue is just going to be the course of doing business.
And then in terms of, I'm happy you brought up Green Light Go. Is that like something, when we're doing that, is that we're going to be able to time those for both scenarios and we can just say, hey, it's closed now and the timing changes? Or would we have to?
Yeah,
hit
my understanding
something?
is we will have a preset for Central Business District closure Plan 1, and you hit that switch and it changes everything.
And one little in the weed suggestion would be Walnut Street. Trying to think. I can send you an email about this. I was just curious, but Walnut Street, you're coming in on Gay and you turn left on Walnut.
Yes.
That northbound lane, would that make sense as like a southbound left turn only lane to get onto Market Street? Because I feel like that could help with Chestnut coming in, at least to get like the 200, 300 block of East Gay. I feel like that could get some things moving a little faster there. But I'll just email you.
We could take a look at that.
I'll put it on my to-do list.
Yep, yeah, we can plug that all in. Yeah.
I'm going to bring up some similar things, but down on my end. So I am on Sharpless Street, just south of Price. And there are a few very concerned citizens about the shutdown because they feel that the traffic is all in their front yard. They live on Price Street. So it's a big concern of mine because it's my ward. I would like to, in the long run, be looking at plans for how to manage the traffic on Price Street because it is real and I don't know how significant it is, but it's definitely going to need some addressing. Not today, but
No,
eventually.
yeah, that's a great point. We answer a number of traffic concerns on Price Street each year. We do a number of traffic studies on Price Street each year because it's Gay Street with stop signs sometimes. So I understand the fears are real. Yeah.
So I think this committee has to make a recommendation to council as to whether we're going to do no shutdown, 3-day shutdown, or complete shutdown. I think that's what the ask was, John, right?
And just one more thing I wanted to point out and ask of council, because a lot of people, the planning long-term and the need for that, there is a grant program available from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. It's called the Transportation and Community Development Initiative that does long-term planning on looking at things of multimodal needs. And they rotate between Pennsylvania and New Jersey of whose turn it is. Currently, it's Pennsylvania's. Key is there's no matching requirement here. So it might be good to have borough staff, I would be happy to work on this grant application to do a long-term study of what our options are on Gay Street, not only within the open air market, but I think wrapping it in more holistically. We did the comprehensive plan on Gay Street and Market Street, but that's in 2016 and we haven't taken the next step on that. Maybe making some kind of application to do a more holistic study, especially if there is a grant that we can get with no matching funds. I think that's a good key step forward for whatever recommendation you might make for this year, to include at least trying to study to get some more visualizations on what our options are in the future.
Okay, thank you. We work with Mr. Metric on that. Looking for recommendations.
I'm going to recommend that we do the shutdown for the week I think the question is the months that we're going to do it in. I know that this year with the issues,
I don't think we can plan around Pico. Their schedule is unreliable, right? So we just have to, yeah, we just have to, if that's the recommendation, we have to pick the dates. Is it going to be April to October? Is it going to be Memorial Day to Labor Day? I'm still a proponent of giving retail space, additional outdoor space and keeping it open for emergencies, but I know that I'm in the minority there. I'm still going to say that that's my position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, going to officially, my personal recommendation is that we just go for it. If we want to do it, let's do it. The other thing I have in mind is if one day down the road, council decides to make this permanent, we will have road work done on Market Street again, and we will figure that out, and we will have road work done on Chestnut Street, and we'll figure that out. And I feel like just committing to the idea is the move.
So is the recommendation, what are the dates? Memorial Day to Labor Day, April to October?
From the bid perspective, I think it would be best to try and, at least for this year, focus Memorial Day to Labor Day and just make it a simplified, because Pico right now plans by March 17th to move back to do High Street. You can assume they're going to be working on High Street between Chestnut and Market Street for probably at least 3 months. So at best, they start work early summerish, but that could be delayed for all we know. But later in the fall, they'll probably definitely be doing Market Street. I think it's very safe to say by, September time that they will certainly be on Market Street.
Thank you. So I will ask the committee then that they're in agreement for Memorial Day to Labor Day.
agreed.
Can we set a starting date and not set an ending date? And encourage people not to read into that too much? Because things are going to change. So when we have the information, we could maybe pick the most appropriate date closer to that date. Let's change the date.
Yeah, I would be a proponent, if, now this is going to be a 2-1 vote, but I would be a proponent of, as Mr. O'Brien recommended, Memorial to Labor Day. And if we need to change that, we can. So 2-1, Mr. Metric, and
So I had Kevin Gore, Director of Building and Housing. I have one wrinkle to add to this, and it's not necessarily encompassed within the Gay Street closure, but it has to do with the dining platforms. Mr. Metric and I spoke about this and spoke with Al Vinatelli. We can't allow the platforms to be put onto the street in any area where there's paving work going to be completed. So we don't know when that paving work's going to be done. So we would need Borough Council to make the decision to hold off on the issuing of any platform permits where paving work has to be done. Because if that platform's down, we won't be able to go in there and pave, because wherever that road work's being done, they're going to be paving curb to curb. And the platforms would be in the way. We ran into this last year on Market Street where they wanted to do paving, but the platforms were already down at Mercado's and the paving hasn't been done. So we need to be on top of it this year to make sure that the work is completed properly.
Can we let those businesses know and then roll out carpets or, allow them to use the space, but not have is that possible?
It's possible. We did that in the past. So where we weren't allowing the platforms to go down, we did allow some temporary measures to be put in place. It wasn't very safe, though. We have to really come up with a process on how we can do it safely. Additionally, what in the past when the paving work was getting done on Gay Street a couple of years ago, we said, please don't put out the platforms, and we prorated the fee for the meter space to when they were allowed to put them down. So that is one concession that we made for them. So they didn't pay. Obviously, they're not going to pay the full fee because they weren't using them for the whole time. So if we are going to allow them to use the space without the platforms there, we have to figure out how that can be safely, you know,
So I'm trying to think as you're talking. If we're closing the streets down, are the platforms necessary?
no, but it's not, and that's why I said it's not necessarily Gay Street, but you have Church and Market where work has been done and is going to be done, and there's platforms on those streets. So last year when we had the street closed, people weren't putting their platforms out there because they didn't need to spend the money to put it out if the street was closed. But the other streets where the road work is being done, we have to make sure that we are on top of that and we don't have platforms there.
How long will they have to have, like, not have platforms there?
We don't have an answer on that yet. I emailed Al today and he doesn't know. The work could go into June and he doesn't know. We don't have an exact date of the paving work.
So so even if we don't know the when, but when we still don't know the how long even, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Are there, yeah, I mean, the idea of just being in a parking space, sitting at a table with chairs on Market Street is horrifying to me. Yeah, are there, you said something about like trying to think about how we could make it safer. Do you have anything in mind, anything that's been done before?
No, nothing that's safe without putting Jersey barriers there that can be, and they're not easy to move. So, I mean, it's easier than having a platform there, but that would be the safest thing. Just putting chairs on the street with some temporary fencing isn't too safe.
Yeah, and I was wondering if if we end up closing Gay Street, we're going to have trucks moving bin blocks around. If we could coordinate that, and we got some last time, maybe we could call Don Braceland. He found free ones, I guess. We could call him up for that. But I just like, if we could try to coordinate the two things, I think that would be great. And that was my real question was, are bin blocks easier than platforms? And it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, because they could be removed, fairly quickly with the right equipment. But is the borough going to eat that cost of moving them for the business owner? That's something you have to think about. All right, thank you.
If I can just add to that. So just to bring some clarity, we're talking about 3 restaurants here on Church Street and then Mercado. So you have Kuma, where the trench work has been done by Pico. The road has been resurfaced. So it really just needs to be paved at this point. So it's a question of when the borough is going to repave that, because the borough is responsible. The contract that the Pico has with InfraSource has them repaving the state roads, not repaving the side roads. So Church Street will ultimately be done by the borough. Now there might be, I'm not sure whether Al or somebody in Public Works knows if there's going to be funds that the borough receive for doing that work, but they won't physically schedule that. It's going to be the borough that's going to do that. So there's some control. I would like to think that we would be able to know whether or not we're going to repave on Church Street, and then Greystone Oyster Bar is the other one. Just so everybody knows, the cost of building a platform that those 3 restaurants have incurred is about $20,000. And Kuma just did that. And they're obviously looking to recoup their, investment to a degree. So I would like to think that the borough would be able to understand if they're going to repave Church Street or not this year to make that determination going forward. For Mercado, it wouldn't make sense to repave that road until the entire Harmony One project is done. Because part of that contract too will be the contractor InfraSource will do curb to curb. So the likelihood of Market Street being repaved, or at the point where it needs to be repaved before the end of the fall, is extremely unlikely. So I think we need to also kind of maybe look at this little case by case basis where, Greystone and Kuma would be one decision and Mercado would be another decision. I know I've worked and talked with InfraSource. We met with Public Works about this and InfraSource on Friday during our weekly calls. they're willing to work to a degree with it. So I guess the question really is, when is the borough going to repave Church Street? Is that on the list this year, or is that a future year thing? So, thank you.
Mr. Metric, is that something we can get an answer to? The paving of Church Street?
Yeah, Al Venatelli is working on our paving, schedule of roads to be paved this year. So we should have that pretty soon. I don't have it right now.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the closing of Gay Street? Okay. Much shorter than last month. And action items, item number 4. The first one, approve the public safety meeting minutes from February. Mr. Carl? Mr. Allen? Thank you. And resolution to adopt the emergency operation plan. There's someone, hello.
Good evening, John Brill, the Emergency Management Coordinator for the Borough of Westchester. Annually, we're required in emergency management to go through our entire plan and make sure that everything is up to date, all the information is current, and we've done that. And some of the major changes that were to this year's plan really only involved our resources and our contact list for notifications in case of an emergency, because we had a major turnover in council people. That was part of what we had to deal with. But the remainder of our plan, really, there weren't any major changes that we had to make. Through the county, we're required, whenever there's a major change in leadership for elected officials, to do a new resolution for you to adopt our emergency operations plan. So I have a copy of the plan. I was talking with Dana earlier. I'm going to supply her with the updates so that she has a complete update of the plan. So we're just asking you to consider council adopting a new resolution this year that would say that the current plan supersedes the old plan, is essentially what we're looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Is it Burley?
Yes, for the borough.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. And Mr. Metric, is that something that we would put on for this month or next month for borough, for council to approve?
We can do it this month.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Thank you. Five, any other business? All right, meeting adjourned at 6:09. Thank you.